Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Consistent Performance Podcast. Today is going to be about how you can implement an optimized calendar structure that will help you to free up minimum 3 hours per day in work that's either distracted, that's not focused, that's time being wasted, or on low value tasks. Okay, so a lot of people have been requesting this training in our high performing agency owner group. And so that's why we're going to dive into this. And so a lot of people, they come to me and they tell me that they feel like their way of working every day is not really structured. It's not really optimized. And they always tell me, hey, time management is a big issue, making sure that you use the time the most efficient and effective way possible. Plus other things also, not having the day end up super late in the evening, and that you like really play catch up, feel guilty of not working enough, and feeling guilty of having wasted time during the day. Okay, so what I will do in this call is guide you through the macro perspective, how you can structure your days, what are the principles to keep in mind, and then how you can implement this for yourself. Okay, so let's directly dive in. So as we're going to make this interactive, if you have a calendar in front of you, okay, the first thing you should look at is the following. Do you use time blocking in general already, or is your calendar super empty and you don't really organize yourself? That's the first step, that you structure your day in your calendar with time blocks, okay? So now, how do you do this? The first element I recommend you to do is to block out the start and the end of your day. So having a little block for your morning routine, for getting ready, and for when you're going to start to work. Okay, so that the time from waking up to in the morning is planned, because then you know, okay, that's the time I'm going to wake up, and that's the time I'm going to start working. Okay, so that's the start of your day. For the end of your day, you should have something similar. You should have a time where you're going to lower your lights, where you're going to start a shutdown time. This will help you to wind down in the evening, to make sure you're getting good sleep, and to make sure that then you're energized in the most productive way and that you can be on the next day. Okay. After these two things are in there, then you want to make sure that you block out other things. So very important, dinner has to be blocked out. If the dinner isn't blocked out, chances are you eat dinner too late again, or just grab some quick stuff, or something unhealthy. Again, sleep will be affected. So dinner has to be in there, and it should be at a time that's not too late in the evening, at least 3 hours before bedtime, so you can digest properly. And then after this, I would block out the lunchtime. Block out the lunchtime. What is your goal for eating lunchtime? This should also not vary so much. You should have a clear goal for dinners and for lunchtimes. Why? Because that gives you urgency to finish your tasks in a more productive way in the morning, because you know, hey, I have this planned out. Okay. Then after this is dialed in, then I would look at the following. So do you have important meetings that cannot be rescheduled for whatever reason? Okay, then let's have them in there as well. Okay, that might be the case. Some meetings you cannot reschedule for whatever reason. After this, I would schedule in my workouts. And the workouts I would put in the afternoon. Either, for most people, it's great to have them either at the end of work, so you have urgency to finish work, because it's a nice separation to end your workday and then go to the gym or work out. Or another great thing is that will help you massively with focus is to work out after lunch. So you come, you have lunch, you take a walk, or go to the gym and have some time, like half an hour at least in between, and also not eating too much. And then you can totally work out after your lunch. The bonus is you will have no afternoon low when you work out after lunch. We'll make sure that you have an awesome afternoon focus, and then you have a free time in the evening as well. Okay, so getting the lunch dialed in and making sure that you have the workout scheduled. So that means now you have basically the building blocks. Morning, you have evening, you have dinner, you have lunch, and you have workouts already being scheduled in. So now let's talk about the macro perspective of how to structure your day. In the morning, you want to have work that is in the quadrant of the Eisenhower decision matrix, in the important but not in the urgent category. That's the mistake many people do. They directly jump into email, Slack, and so forth. and then they directly are in fire mode and putting out fires here and there. So what's much smarter is, of course, you can only do that when your bedtime is on point, when you're waking up relatively early and you're energized. Once that is happening, and we have a whole training on this as well, then you can start to block out at least 1 hour in the morning where you work on stuff that is important for the business, but that you could always procrastinate on. Systemizing processes in the business, SOPs, hiring more people, and so on, before you actually jump into the operative stuff. Check Slack and check emails. That should come later. So how do you call this? I like to call this deep work block in the morning. 1 to 1.5 hours is already a great start. And then I would call 2 other work blocks, focus block 1 and focus block 2. If you want to work on actually getting more deep work done, then you can also have 2 deep work blocks and only 1 focus block. Now you might be asking, what's the difference between deep work block and focus block? Deep work block is the quadrant 2 tasks where you have no communication with anybody, no Slack, no email, and so forth. And the focus block is where you are communicating with people, which is more important and urgent, right? So let's say you start work at 8, you can have a deep work block until 9 or 9:30. And then from 9:30, you can then jump into Slack, talk to your team, put out client fires on all these types of things, okay? The problem is, if you were to do this first thing, that you get confronted with all the fires, and then people waiting for you, and then your focus will be all over the place, and it's chances are you will not get to these most important things like SOPs and creating these important things that will grow the business. Okay, so that's why prioritizing that first thing, making time for this, starting early, and then after jumping into the fires of the business. That is how I would structure my day. And then you structure it with either 50-minute block and 10-minute break, or also 1.5 hour blocks straight. That's the maximum I would go for. Better 50 minutes straight and then 10-minute break for the movement is important. Then that's where you can block out full 1 hour slots, 3 of those. For example, if you start at 8, you can do one let's say at 8 until 9:30 or 8 until 9, then until 10, and then until 11. And then you have another one, or you have some catch up, and then you do the lunch break. With that setup, you get important stuff done. You make sure you take breaks in between, and you will prioritize the most important things. And that's the most important thing in general, the main thing is to keep the main thing. And so that's how you structure yourself. You have breaks and you take care of the real stuff. Then you have your lunch break, and ideally you can still have time for meetings and so on, but I would have them more towards the lunch break, towards 11 a.m. and so forth. Ideally, you have them in the afternoon, where you then have your lunch break, then importantly having time for walks and movement to re-energize. And then when you go to the gym in the afternoon, then you have more time to work in a focused manner in the afternoon then after that. Or you may basically directly work and then you go to the gym in the evening. But it's still recommended to have some form of movement in either way in the afternoon, because this will help you with focus so much. And so the afternoon then is called for shallow work. So that means you have mostly calls in there, can be sales calls, but can also be team meetings or external calls. And then apart from this, I would work in like shorter time slots. You can do 50-10 again or 25-5, block that in. And you have this time blocked, these longer blocks, and then you work on the most important things for the afternoon. A good habit is to have something like an afternoon restart ritual, which says, okay, I'm getting back on track from like coming from the gym or coming from a walk, put my headphones in, put Brain FM on, and really get started again and reset my intention for focus and ask myself, what's the main one thing? What's the one big thing I want to achieve for this afternoon? And then you take it step by step and you just work in 25-5 or 50-10 maximum blocks, take a bit more breaks, re-energize a bit more, and then your focus should also be great in the afternoon. Okay, but since it's more calls and these types of things and more like communication type of work, it's also not that big of a deal usually. So the type of work you do there is more like communication, lighter tasks, shallow tasks that don't require that much of a deep focus. It's usually more communication based, like calls and so forth. And then when you take these breaks in between, work on the most important tasks, then you can have a hard stop before your dinner or before you go to the gym. Have your end of work ritual where you review your day, plan the next day. What you can do, a nice trick I use myself, is you can plan your next day already in the afternoon when you restart your work again. Why is that powerful? Because sometimes people are tired then in the evening and when they end work and they don't do the afternoon or the end of work ritual. And so then it's actually smart to say, okay, I'm going to review my morning and plan the next morning on that afternoon. And then that's already super powerful to just have the next morning planned. And that will super nicely help you, because a lot of people talk about plan tomorrow today, but then they don't really do it consistently. And that's why you should find a way to at least plan your one big thing. And you can already plan this after the morning is over. Then the next morning you can plan ahead. And this is a nice trigger to say, okay, I come back from lunch. The first thing I do is look at how did my morning go, what's lined up for the next morning. Okay. And this will free up so much time, simply because you know directly what you're going to work on, and you're not going to get distracted. And so that way you have your calendar super nicely blocked out. If you want more details on this, how this actually looks like in the calendar, or you want screenshots or things like that, let me know. I can help you with this out. But in general, a few factors to consider to then actually make sure you're freeing out 3 hours in wasted time is the following. Your phone has to be adapted, make sure the distractions are blocked out there. Your laptop has to be adapted. You need to have good routines in terms of winding down in the evening so that your sleep is good, so that you're actually not going to dabble in the morning and do some crazy stuff and waste time, even though you should be working on the most important things. And so that comes back to good sleep, but also goes back to having a good routine to directly start and not get distracted with other stuff like emails or Facebook and so on. That goes back to blocking out your phone, blocking out the computer and so forth. Okay, that makes it much easier. And the other thing is also setting boundaries. If you, for example, still take calls like super late, and then you basically just in the morning waste a lot of time because I can just always work late. Well, then you also gonna work late. That's Pareto's law, that you basically gonna use the time up that you give yourself for completion. So if you say, I can just work until 8, 9, 10, well, then you're just gonna waste a lot of time because you always think I can just do this later. And so if you give yourself hard stop, hey, 6, I have to end because, I have gym after this, otherwise it gets too late. Or even better, you have a date night scheduled with your partner and say, okay, then I go there and the table is reserved. That is urgency. So you got to get the stuff done. No time to be wasted there. And that way you're super efficient and making the most out of the time in your calendar. Hope that gave you some ideas, some inspiration. If you want more specific help on this, just go to kilianmarkert.com, book your free consultation in there, and we can go over your calendar and actually optimize that and give you some tips and how you can apply these strategies for yourself so you can grow your business the most efficient way possible to those high 6 and 7 figures, but do so without burning yourself out or without neglecting other areas of your life. All right. Super excited to have you guys on board and see you in the next episode.